Hey everyone, Synth for the Future here, and today I want to take a look at the Synclavier by Arturia from the V-Collection. I'm going to have to do a quick rectification to myself. You might remember the ranking I made, and I placed the Synclavier all the way at D rank. After doing a little bit more investigation, I am going to have to say this one has to move up a little bit. I would say up to a B rank, and we'll cover why in a little bit. But I did sort of underestimate this synthesizer, so I think rectifications are in order there. And that being said, let's dive into it and let's talk a little bit about what it is, what it does, and what it sounds like. Starting with what it sounds like. So I'm going to pick some random presets and we'll get some feeling for the sound, and I'll talk a little bit about what it does and how it works and how you can use this VST. So without further ado, here we go. So yeah, some pretty wild sounds in the presets already. Now I'm not going to do a full deep dive into the entire synthesis engine because that's just way too much to go into in this video. I would recommend looking up Cat Synth TV, who did a pretty good job explaining all this stuff. Sadly, the included welcome tutorial is very limited in explaining how the synthesis engine actually works, and so is the documentation, which does tell a lot about the history and general Arturia VST control, but it doesn't really cover the synthesis engine itself very well, or at least not in the first, I don't know how many pages. So that's a bit of a miss, and there isn't that much information on this synth online, I have noticed, so definitely check out those tutorials, and I'll cover some of the basics here. It's a pretty complicated synthesizer, additive synthesis, FM synthesis, and also some sampling. And just to make it a little bit more complex, you get 2 screens, or actually 3 screens. This is the most compact form of the screen. And the initialized sound, which you can expand. And there's also the computer screen, edit screen. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, which makes it pretty complex, which is also the reason why initially I ranked it a lot lower, because the documentation doesn't really cover this concept really well. So when I first opened it, I was mostly confused and annoyed because I couldn't get any sound out of this thing. Very basic premise of it, let's stick to the additive stuff, is that you can create frames within each partial, and basically it behaves a little bit like a wavetable synthesizer, where it moves between frames, and this is pretty cool and very nicely represented with the graphics down here. And you get 12 of these partials, and every partial has its own modulator for FM synthesis, so you can actually modulate that as well. So let's just do something quickly here. This, I don't know, sure. And you can see it animating through these movements. You can also loop it. Which can be synced as well. That's pretty cool. And right now the FM is not working because it's not engaged into FM synthesis. We can turn it up in the mixer. So if we, a little bit of FM, not too much. So now we can hear that FM synthesis kicking in. This alone makes it pretty powerful already, because basically you have a wavetable, additive wavetable you can make with an sort of wavetable FM synthesis mod to it. Also you can change the amplitude if you want to. So you can really mess around with this thing, which is pretty insane. Add to that full control over the envelopes of all the partials. And also control over the harmonic envelopes. This gets pretty deep pretty fast, especially with this many parcels going on, looping capabilities. You can also split it over the keyboard, change the velocity depending on the keys you play. A whole lot of stuff going on in here. Sample loading is also a thing, and it also allows you to import your own samples, which is always a cool option to have. You can really personalize what you're doing, or you can just use the synthesis engine. There's a whole lot of interesting stuff going on here. Another thing which is pretty cool is you can also change stuff like the pitch over time. And this is for every parcel, so when you start to add parcels, you can actually create really weird, funky, interesting sounds with a whole lot of movement. Pretty cool stuff. So yeah, it's a very deep synthesizer. Sadly, a little bit flawed due to its complexity in the fact that you have a lot of screens to deal with. I mean, this is going to be easier than the actual thing, I bet. But you do get your engine screen with 12 partial screens, a mixer screen, which is pretty intimidating by itself, envelopes for everything, dynamics, mod matrix, which is also pretty complex because you have a mod parameter for every partial. They did keep the DX7 style assignment, which is really nice. So you can pretty easily say I want to use the mod wheel to, for instance, change the harmonic. No, let's do FM. Where are you? FM amount, for instance. Now you can set it for every partial. And you can change it for partial 1 and 2 all separately. So there's a whole lot of power in this thing, but because it's very different, it will probably be quite hard to get really into this thing properly. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not your everyday synthesizer, which is a good thing when you want to create unique sounds, of course, but it can be a bit tricky to work with. So keep that in mind and look up some resources that teach all these parameters and all these things. That was also the reason why I was a little bit hesitant to give this a really high rating, because I can imagine a lot of people really digging the presets, but not really getting into the synthesis engine itself. Another thing to note with this Synclavier is that not all the parameters can be modded from this screen. So even though this will be most likely the primary screen you'll be using, there are some controls exclusively to the other screen. So aside from having a lot of parameters in a lot of separate screens here, you will occasionally have to switch back to this view as well, for instance for the arpeggiator. So it does add quite a bit of visual bulk. At the same time, I honestly wouldn't know how they could have done this any more compact with the amount of parameters there are. But it is a little bit tricky to navigate everything and get used to this interface. There's just so much going on, and pads with this synthesizer. So it's definitely one of those really nice tools. Very lush sounding, very cool, but definitely not very easy to use. So do keep that in mind. I would definitely, if you're interested into these very complex sound engines, check it out. It is very unique in that way, just like the original unit was very unique and absolutely outside of many people's budget. So this is a very good alternative. So I misjudged it, I'll be honest about that, and I think it's very cool. It's just one of the synthesizers I don't see myself. I see myself playing a lot with it, but I don't see myself using it a lot in tracks, if that makes any sense, because it's very hard to convey your ideas from your head into this sort of additive FM synthesis. But still, the pads and evolving sounds that are included with the presets are excellent. So definitely, if you're interested, check out the free demo, which you can download from their website. And I'll just play a few more sounds just to lead you out. And I wish you a great day.